Yeah, for those of you watching around the world, I guess you'd say you were the Rebel Alliance. As Sal said, I want to share with you this habit that changed my career, but even more so, it changed my life. And it took a long time for it to become a real habit. And like any habit, it requires regular maintenance. So here's the backstory. I spent years having at least some component of dread when I was going to work. Now, don't get me wrong. I loved what I was doing. Like you, I felt that it was the epitome of purpose-driven, but there were aspects of it that overwhelmed any sense of awesomeness. And I think that's true of a lot of life, that the negatives get amplified and the positives, they kind of just get filed away, right? And kind of just collect dust. They don't get as much attention. Physiologically, we're wired that way. And that right there is like a key, or was a key, that opened up a complete frame shift. Knowing that the negatives get amplified and the positives just kind of filed away. It's a primer to understanding one of the foundations of burnout. And, when we fully embrace the negatives, and the list of negatives associated with this line of work can be long and distinguished. And, when we fully embrace only them, then that's our perspective, right? It's kind of like, you are the 5 people you choose to surround yourself with. Like if you are only embracing the negative, then that's kind of who you become. So it follows that the opposite might be true. If we fully embrace positives, then not only does our perspective shift, our mood shifts, and I would argue that our physiology shifts. And we're going to talk about all of that. I'm going to talk about specific techniques for this in a moment, but you all well know that a day in the ED is rarely positive. Let's be honest about that. And it's probably more true now than it ever was. So what I want to talk about is using the knowledge of our seemingly, not even seemingly, just our natural proclivity to embrace and amplify negatives while diminishing the positives. And I want to turn that 180 degrees and adopt a habit. And that habit changed my career. And I've got multiple careers, and it changed them all. What is it? It's gratitude. Yep, gratitude is a habit. Now, before you shut things down, I used the word gratitude in a talk to emergency clinicians with a little trepidation, because even when I say it, and this is my thing, my talk, even I have an internal eye roll. Oh, Jesus, seriously? Gratitude? It's not the natural inclination for most of us to feel a state of gratitude. And especially when things feel really crappy, someone's saying, hey, just have a little gratitude. That can feel effete. It can feel like an indulgence. It can feel like unicorn and rainbow's new age claptrap. And you know what? Let's just take that as a given. Maybe it is all that. Let's just say it's all those things, but it's also an evidence-based technique to feel better and be better. But even more so, it's a reset and a recharge and a refresh of so many systems of your body. Frankly, it just feels good, right? It just feels good. And when I say a habit of gratitude, I think it's easy to dismiss as, some ethereal generality. But the habit or habits I want to talk to you about are very specific in how they're done. And it involves a pre-game gratitude and a post-game gratitude. So let's break that down. Pre-game, starting a shift. A colleague I collaborate with, he told me about this years ago. And when I heard it, it was like a slap in the face, a good slap in the face, but an awakening. It changed my career. completely changed it. A tiny difference, a simple exercise, big rate of return. So before each shift, I would think this, or sometimes I'd even write it. I am open to accepting gratitude from my patients. Simple. And for me, there was an immediate exponential return on investment with just a few seconds. That was it, just a few seconds and a little change in mindset. Now, it sounds like a small thing, right? Saying to yourself, I'm open to accepting gratitude from my patients. And it is a small thing in one way. Considering the amount of time it takes in the arc of a day. But when you look at patient interactions closely, or not even patient interaction, any interaction in life for that matter, how does it make you feel when someone accepts your gratitude? How does it feel? It feels great. Here's what I mean. Say you thank somebody, and I don't mean in a cursory way, oh yeah, hey, thanks, but you really mean it. Thank you. What is the difference between how it feels for you when someone either blows you off or fully engages you, or at least just acknowledges the gratitude? They are very different experiences. Equally important, how do you feel when you take a moment to accept the gratitude directed toward you? When you accept the intention, or when you set the intention to accept gratitude, it enhances the experience of the giver and the receiver. It's as win-win as it gets. Now, accepting gratitude from others for some can be really uncomfortable. I think for many of us, it can be really uncomfortable. We tend to diminish the significance of gratitude and think about what you're doing. Like that last talk, we're talking about infarct course and strokes and, giving people movement back. And it's massive. And the gratitude people feel there is just, it's almost unmeasurable. But why are we uncomfortable about that? Is it related to imposter syndrome? Maybe, maybe like that internal voice, I'm not really good enough for this, I don't deserve this. Or I think one thing that emergency clinicians think a lot, I didn't really do that much. Why is it so hard for us to receive and embrace gratitude? I can't answer that question for you. Oftentimes we're rushed and someone's rushing it saying, thank you, and you're doing your documentation, you kind of wave. But what if you paused, said, hang on for a second, finish what you were doing, and then fully engage them and receive their gratitude? How would that feel differently for you than what we usually do? So try this. At the start of your next shift, say to yourself, or think it, or write it down, I'm open to accepting gratitude from my patients. I have yet to find someone who has adopted this practice and found that their experience at work was worse. Now, for many of us, even thinking something like this, or especially doing something like this, even in your own mind, where as far as I know, no one else can see it, I think, it still feels really uncomfortable, feels kind of weird, but it works, and it's simple, and it's free. And there are no negative side effects. Now, I like to think of this gratitude exercise as one type of pre-gaming, creating or engineering a positive mental set point. So when there is gratitude from a patient, or anyone else for that matter, you are now ready to pause, engage, and graciously accept it. Because none of us start the day hoping that it's a bad day, or hoping that we can treat our patients poorly, or hoping that we can blow people off. Really, though, we don't think about it much at all. We just get up and go. There's not a lot of attention to the intention of our day. And you are elite level performers. And as elite level performers, emergency clinicians are kind of outliers, because other elite level performers do start their day with intent, clear intent. So, recommendation number 1, Try that small effort of intent. I am open to accepting gratitude from my patients. And the literature on gratitude has an almost universal conclusion. It's a healthy habit. Reading through all of the studies, I have yet to find one demonstrating negative effects. But rather than go through all of that and show you slides and graphs and wiggity, I want to tell you about a physiologic study I did on myself, which involves the second half of this gratitude practice, the post-game. Now, we'll put that on the shelf for a moment, that N of 1 study. We'll get back to that in a moment. But first, the specifics of the post-game. So here it is. At the end of the day, whether the day was delightful or crappy or mundane or, you're like totally magnanimous or whatever, I tried and try to take a moment and intentionally evoke a feeling of gratitude. Now, there's a lot of ways to do this. A popular one is write it down. I've got, these are all gratitude kind of journals, but I'll tell you, I don't find that those work for me because obviously they're sitting right there and not at my main desk because it just feels like something else I neglect. Ends up feeling like something I'm neglecting. So I just do it on my own mind. You know what? If you want to write it down, that might work great for you. But what I found worked and works for me is to do a brief gratitude meditation before bed. And I try to do this every night. Did it last night before. There is too much, however, frenetic activity in the brain at the end of the day to just immediately get there, to get into that state. You've got popcorn in your brain. You got popcorn of ping pong thoughts going. It makes really feeling that gratitude, really feeling it hard. And sometimes, there's been some negative interaction or something bad has happened and the spotlight on the negative is too bright. And I find after a shift, that's when it's most noticeable. Because, there's some thing that happens, some consultant or some patient thing or just some procedural thing. It's like, oh man, you just bring it in and internalize it and it feels like a pit of hot coal in there. We can turn that around. Here are the exact steps that I do. I sit down and I do a few minutes of a breathing exercise to begin shifting from that sympathetic activated state to a parasympathetic, more chill state, activated to chill. And what this looks like specifically is 2 minutes of breathing in for 5 seconds, holding for 5 seconds, and then breathing out for 5 seconds. Do that for a few minutes, and that's followed by 2 or 3 minutes then of breathing in for 5, holding for 10, and then breathing out for 15. Now, I ran out of hands. The exact numbers don't matter. You don't have to remember the exact numbers, but it's slow in, a hold, and then a longer exhale than the inhale. And this starts to quiet the mental popcorn and it helps us to get to a place of focus. After that very specific breathing exercise, I'll do a few minutes of mindful breathing, mindfulness meditation, vipassana, whatever you want to call it, just being aware of the breath, noticing thoughts, coming back to the breath. In and out. And all of this is just preparatory for the gratitude practice. When I'm a few minutes into it, I'm ready to review the day. And I try to do this in a chronological order of how the day played out. And I find those moments in the day that were wonderful, either in the small or large sense. It could be a smile from someone in my family, maybe even a stranger, a nice cup of tea. If I'm podcasting a moment in an interview that was really cool and unexpected. If you've had a shift in the emergency department, gratitude from a patient or maybe a difficult diagnosis uncovered. The feeling of my team running really well. Here's something that you relate to that I personally found just to be such an awesome moment. That dark red flash of blood and the relief when you're putting in a central line. It's just a small thing, but just, okay, I'm there. It doesn't matter. And it's different every day. it's different for everybody. And, I heard a great description of this just recently. You are making these seemingly ordinary things extraordinary. And even if you were crazy busy that day, even if the negative stuff was piled high like cordwood, there were some splinters of positive. And then as you're going through your day and you hit those moments in your review of the day, really put yourself back there. What does it feel like? How do you feel? Personally, I know when I really hit these because I usually find myself physically smiling at that point in practice. Can't help it. When you really evoke that gratitude and just, that was great when that happened. Can't help it. I've found that sleep is better the next day. Next day has a little extra shine to it. And the marginal gains of doing this daily accumulate. Now, I told you at the beginning of this that I go through a very specific sequence of steps, right? A breathing exercise followed by a short meditation, followed by breath in and out of my nose and the gratitude practice. And I also told you that I find myself smiling involuntarily more often than not. And I frankly thought that involuntary aspect of the smile was something unusual. It's like, definitely something neurohormonal was going on. It felt like a serotonin surge or a dopamine surge. So I decided to study what was happening in those moments with heart rate variability, HRV, sometimes called. Now, without getting too deep into it or too deeply into it, changes in heart rate variability are associated with changes in the autonomic nervous system. The lower the variability, the more sympathetic. The higher the variability, more beat to beat variability, the more parasympathetic, the more calm. I mean, guys look at EKGs all day. You know that, right? Variability. It's not exactly the same, but, parasympathetic, sympathetic. And that parasympathetic often associated with, relaxed well-being. So what I did is I used a sleep tracker to measure my heart rate variability during this end of the day gratitude meditation, and there was a surprising consistent effect. When I was thinking about, me or problems or like negative things or just on my breathing or just, any of those mundane things or not the positive, my heart rate variability always went down, more sympathetic. But every time I switched to gratitude and I'm thinking about the things I'm thankful for, I'm thinking about the ways I can make other people's lives better or they make my life better, my heart rate variability increased. The autonomic nervous system, I'm going out of the screen. The autonomic nervous system consistently had a state change. There was and is a feeling of well-being, and there was a natural and there was a measurable change in physiology. So recommendation number 2, post-game, pre-bed gratitude meditation. So what is the one habit that changed my career and life? Gratitude, beginning with, I'm open to accepting gratitude from my patients. You can change that to, I am open to accepting gratitude from others and just see how your day goes. And then ending the day with a survey of how that day went. And then shine the light of your attention on those great moments, small and large. You are in a line of work that has a lot of hard things about it. It's a hard job. But the evidence is very clear on this, that gratitude predicts life satisfaction. But flipping that around, life satisfaction does not predict that someone will be grateful. Let me say that again. Gratitude predicts life satisfaction. But flipping it around, life satisfaction does not predict that someone will be grateful. So what does that mean? That suggests not just an association, but a causation, right? Gratitude predicts life satisfaction, but flipping it around, life satisfaction does not predict that someone will be grateful. That suggests causation. And pretty clear. So What's one habit that changed my career, that changed my life, that I think that you will get benefit from too? It is gratitude. So, until we talk again, my friends, which I think will be in about a minute, keep on rocking.